My name is Geraldine. Oh, there it goes. Hi, folks. My name is Geraldine. I use she, her pronouns. I am an admissions officer here at Pomona in Southern California. I too am an alum from here. I graduated in May of 21. Also experienced this institution as a first-gen low-income and undocked student. So happy to talk about those experiences and chat later if that's of interest to you. I'm just happy to be here and share some of this. Pass it on to who's next.
Welcome, folks. It's so good to have you all here. My name is Windsor Jordan. I'm an Associate Dean of Admissions and Director of Access and Equity at Swarthmore College, located in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, just southwest of Philadelphia. I'm also an alum of Swarthmore as well, graduated way back in 2007, and so happy to have you all here to share about our colleges and experiences you could have at them.
And hi, everyone. My name is Carolina Chenique. I'm the Associate Director for Diversity Recruitment here at Williams, up in Northwestern Massachusetts. I am also an alum of my college. I graduated in the class of 2015, and just excited to have you all here and to have a chance to tell you a little bit about our schools, about belonging in our schools.
Incredible. And I forgot to mention that I also am an alum of Bowdoin. So you've got a great panel here to be able to talk about both the admission side of things and the experience of showing up and attending one of our institutions. So just to lay out the next 15-20 minutes or so, we're actually going to go through a slideshow and a presentation about common questions that we've heard about navigating and belonging at our institutions. And from there, most of this time is devoted to Q&A. So as we talk, feel free to drop the questions that you have in the Q&A box, and at the end, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. And so I want to assure you, of course, that you should go ahead and start thinking of those questions now, and you'll be able to go ahead and we'll go ahead and answer those both through typing and also through sharing on a panel. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen for the presentation. I'm just going to look to my panelists for a quick thumbs up that I did that relatively successfully. Great. You've met us all. And I just, if you haven't been able to attend a Six College session before, I just want to go ahead and talk a little bit about who we are and what we hope to do. The Six Colleges are, of course, 6 small liberal arts colleges in the United States who have partnered together to talk about the benefits and the experience of attending a liberal arts institution. We know for this group, that you are really thinking about that college decision and that there will be a lot of factors that come into that. Everything from distance, from home, all the way to what will you do with this degree? Will your time on our campuses be worth it? What is it going to feel like to go to one of our schools? And will you find others who share your background and experiences? So this presentation is really designed to talk a lot about community cohesion and resources on our campuses. And we want to make sure that you understand that we are a collection, again, of 6 colleges across the country, as you heard us introducing ourselves, that really believe in the strength of a liberal arts education and the power of a liberal arts education. We always like to start off these presentations with some employer logos of a lot of the most recent employers of our graduates. And so this is a list, although certainly not comprehensive, of employers that we have pooled together from graduates of our 6 colleges. All of the students that graduated from our colleges studied a wide range of topics to end up where they are. They studied economics and visual arts. They studied computer science, biology and languages and history and neuroscience, and so many other things that are available on our campuses. And so we really want to talk about how the liberal arts is a pathway to a good career, and also that it's a really important experience for our students to be able to find home here. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to one of my colleagues to talk a little bit more about students on our campuses.
Hello again, y'all. Decision to go away from your family to attend college can be a really tough one. Oftentimes, students feel lots of trepidation around leaving a supportive environment at home for what feels like the unknown. For the colleges you're exploring, you're probably interested in finding an academic fit, but you're also probably interested in finding a community fit as well. In many ways, going to college is like looking for your next community or home where you'll find comfort and familiarity, but also be challenged to grow as well. I know when I was exploring colleges, I was asking admissions officers, are there students like me on your campus and how are they supported? Each of our campuses will have communities of students who share your background, whichever your multiple identities is most salient for you. Our campuses offer first generation to college student groups for students who are trailblazers as the first in their family to attend college. For instance, the Williams First community at Williams College includes students who are the first in their family to go to college, students who are the first in their community to travel away after high school, and students who are the first in their high school to attend a college like Williams. The first generation low income student office at Swarthmore College brings together faculty, staff, and students who are the first in their family to attend college. If you're applying to college through the QuestBridge program, you'll find a supportive community of other Questies on our campuses, as well as affinity groups for cultural centers for African American and African students, Native American, Indigenous students, Asian Pacific Islander students, Latinx students, and so many more. Our smaller communities often mean that students in student affinity and cultural groups get easier access to funding to support bringing speakers or presenters to campus and hosting cultural programming, film screenings, and other events all throughout the year. These cultural spaces and affinity spaces on our campuses are places where you're going to find folks who share your experience, but also find folks who will help you think deeply about the role identity plays in all of our lives. For the colleges you're interested in, I encourage you to check out college websites for the numbers of enrolled students who share your experience. Are there students like you on campus, or will you feel like you're one of only a few? Ask current students about their experiences being a student there, especially if you identify as a first generation or low income student. For whatever identities are most salient for you, whether you're a student of color, a first generation to college student, low income student, or you're in the LGBTQ community, it is okay to ask, what is it like to be me on your campus? To each of our colleges, we have a genuine, at each of our colleges, we have a genuine commitment to ensuring that every student thrives. This means having an abundant resources to support your academic, personal success, and emotional well-being. I'll turn it over to my colleague who will talk more about how students find support on our campuses.
Thanks, Windsor. Thanks all for tuning in, right? We know that a lot of y'all are probably interested in these schools because they're top schools, right? Academically, we know that you are going to be challenged, that this is an exciting sort of big step, right? For a lot of us as individuals and for our families, if you're first gen and or low income, right? So a big question that we get across our schools is, okay, I'm here. How am I going to be supported? How are people going to show up for me? And what does that look like, right? So the way we've broken down support across the schools for all of us here is in sort of 3 buckets or 3 categories, right? Firstly, thinking of like our personal support, like one-on-one, how am I going to fare here? Secondly, the support of your community. So people, mentor groups, other folks that, as Windsor was saying, share your identities. And then lastly, institutional support, right? So you sort of have these 3 spheres of resources and of networks to really hold you while you navigate any of these top schools as a first gen or low income student. So we'll start by talking about the personal support, right? What it looks like to be sort of one-on-one with other community members, with other folks here that will hold you up, that will hype you up, and that will have your back. All of our institutions are small, right? That means that as opposed to some other larger universities, research institutions, it means that you are getting one-on-one treatment from professors, from other students, from staff. It means that there is significant overlap in the people that you are meeting, that you are greeting, that you are fostering relationship with. And that means that on the whole, you have different sort of social groups, right? And different networks to pull for academics, for family ties, for shared identities, for dining halls, for social events, and for clubs, right? Socially, we know there's great benefit to sort of being in that small environment. Academically, we know that having that one-on-one support is also huge, right? It means that in your classrooms, you have about, on average, anywhere from like 10, 20 people, 30 people max in a class, right? It means that the professors here are here to be of support to you as an undergraduate, as a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and to really, again, have that one-on-one, that intentional relationship with you while you are here in your 4 years. Secondly, you have the sort of larger sphere of community support, right? So you have mentor groups, will have folks that, as Winsor was saying, will have shared experiences, have walked the world in similar ways to you. And those identity-based groups can be really helpful to transition into what is your first year, right? And sort of easing imposter syndrome and easing feelings of belonging, right, in the space that you're at. Aside from sort of mentor and identity groups, all of our colleges also offer academic support groups. And that means that there are writing centers. It means that there are office hours, that there are groups on campus specifically there to help you academically thrive too, right? So you have your squad of people socially, academically, and often those people will overlap, right? Which is sort of the beauty in the relationships there. And then lastly, you have your institutional support, right? What does that mean? What does it mean to have institutional support from one of these institutions? It means that all of these colleges have a weight to the name that is incredible, right? It means that financial aid across the board is going to be substantial and is going to be largely meeting what you will need, right? It means that you have, for some of these institutions, you will have perhaps the backing of your school for help with legal fees, for example, if you're undocumented, documented. It means that you have the backing of administrators, of faculty, right? Of like really, really incredible, brilliant adults and leaders in higher ed that you will, again, have one-on-one relationships with and that you will be able to lean on for support, whether that be for research, for internships, for classes, and just mentorship generally. And again, the weight of a degree from any of these institutions, while we know will certainly support you while you're there in your 4 years, is the benefit of that is even larger once you graduate, right? So you know that you will have the support while you're here in your 4 years, and also that it will launch you into doing incredible things once you do graduate. So I'll pass it on to our next folk.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I think, you know, one of our biggest jobs as admissions counselors is to kind of express all of the really great things about our institutions, right? All of the fun things that you get to do, right? The academics that you get to pursue, all of the support that you're going to have, right? But it's also really important for us to be realistic, right? And let you know that there may be some bumps in the road, right? There may be some instances where you are dealing with stress, right? Or you're going through some tough times, or there are instances, right, where there is an emergency, right? And so, you know, when I talk to students and I think about, right, when you are going through a tough time and, right, and thinking about health just in general, right, and how you maintain good health during your time as a college student, I always like to think of health in many different facets, right? And so there is mental and there's physical health, right? But also I think of your academic health, right? I think of your emotional health, right? I think of your mental health, right? Your social health, right? And I think that all of those things definitely play a role and can affect each other, right? And so thinking about how you go out and find certain resources across campus, right? And how you find those support systems that Geraldine talked about. And so one of the biggest ones, right, that I really do want to talk about, of course, right, is counseling resources, right? And so all of our institutions, right, all of our campuses will have spaces where you can go and you can speak with counselors, right, about anything, right? As little as I failed an exam to I am dealing with depression or anxiety or some type of mental health struggle, right? And so we recognize that students are going through multiple different things, right? And these counselors are trained in these ways to be able to speak with students, right? All of these institutions are super academically rigorous, right? Some of them are in spaces that are far away, right, from home potentially, or in a really small town, or sometimes the population is super homogenous, right? And people are going through different things, right? And so there are a bunch of resources on each of our campuses, right, to allow you to talk about those stressful times, whether it is academic, whether it is relationship based, right, with someone on campus, someone at home, family, right, financial, whatever it is, right, there are those resources. And so it's really important, right, for students to go out and find those resources and connect with people. And it doesn't always have to be people in those counseling offices, right? I think one of the really great things about institutions is that you're able to make great connections, right, with others, whether that is faculty members, whether those are staff members, and those people are there also to talk to you, right, to get to know you, to create those relationships with you, right? They have your best interest at heart in mind all the time. And so they will always be a support resource for you as well. Thinking about emergencies and things like that, a lot of our deans, right, our deans of students will have emergency funds, right? If you ever need to kind of go home the next day, right, because something has happened in the family, or, you know, I can tell you specifically about Minnesota, right? It gets pretty cold here, right? There is a need for you to be bundled up, I would say at least 6 months out of the year, right? And recognizing that not everyone has access to a coat or a jacket or a hat or something like that, or even sometimes professional clothes, right? And those count as emergencies, right? When we're thinking of, again, your best interest in mind. And so you can always go to certain spaces. There is emergency funding, right? There is funding for students that maybe need to stay on our campuses over the breaks, right? There are times where you maybe can't go home during the winter, or you maybe can't go home during the summer break or something like that, right? We will be there. Our institutions will be there. Going back to what Geraldine said, right? Institutional support. Our institutions are there to make sure that we are supporting students. And so I would say, right, as of now, when you're thinking about colleges, while you're in this college search process, right, do your research on those different support mechanisms, right? Whether those are social support mechanisms, mental and physical health support mechanisms, right? Academic support systems, right? Make sure you are doing that research to make sure that the space that you're entering, the place that you're going to call home for the next 4 years, right, is the actual space for you and has the certain mechanisms in place to make sure that you feel 100% supported during your time in college. I'll pass it on from there.
I can take this. So you've learned about some of the many resources that our institutions and institutions like ours offer to students on campus to help them feel at home, to help them deal with challenges while they're there. And so now we'll talk a little bit about the actual process of applying to our schools, and in particular as well, applying for financial aid. So excuse me, I think we can acknowledge that this is a pretty overwhelming process. There are many different moving parts and pieces to it, and it can be difficult to know where to start. And I just want to say up front that if you feel that way, you're certainly not alone in feeling that way. There are many, many resources out there to help you wade through this process and try to break this down into more manageable chunks as you go through the process of applying for college. This session, for example, is, I think, a good moment to be thinking about how to break down that process into more manageable chunks. So one thing, of course, that you'll want to do is learn about colleges. You know, there are many different colleges out there that, if you look at enough places, might start to sound the same, or feel like there are a lot of things that they have in common, but it'll really be up to you to drill down into the specifics of how those individual institutions work, what kinds of things they offer, whether they're programs or clubs or activities or housing models or what have you, that are going to set them apart and make them a little bit different. And at the same time, think about the things that matter to you. What are the things that you're really looking for in a college, and how might you start to identify that among the different colleges that you're considering? And there are lots of ways to start to dig into this. Of course, again, a session like this, or when our colleges visit your school or your area, or have other kinds of virtual programming, you can look on college websites or social media pages as other places where you might glean information about majors or about research opportunities or what have you. And then there are opportunities for fly-in programs as well. All of our colleges for students in the fall of their senior year offer funded opportunities to visit campus and spend a couple of days perhaps on our campuses to try and envision yourself there and imagine if you could be a student there. And then finally, I would encourage you to maybe look at the more unconventional stuff, you know, maybe look at student newspapers or look at other places where you can get a sense of how students on campus are kind of engaging with each other and how they're talking about the campus and the community. If you have a chance to speak to a current student, whether because a website offers that opportunity or you know someone at your school who may have attended that institution, it's really helpful, I think, to talk to as many different people as possible to get a few different perspectives on a school, because each of those people is probably having a slightly different experience of the institution, and so can shed a little bit of a different light on the experience there. So all of which to say that there are many, many ways to learn about colleges. And so be ambitious about trying many different things, but but also be realistic and try to make it manageable and thinking about how you do that. A couple other things I'll point out, many colleges offer application fee waivers, and there can be different processes for applying for fee waivers. Sometimes the process for doing that is available on the website. Sometimes it's worth reaching out to ask. It never hurts to do that. And then finally, we would encourage you to keep deadlines and requirements all in one place so that it's easy to keep track of things over time. I like to offer spreadsheets, a nice Google sheet as a relatively straightforward way to keep track of all of those things, but notebooks or other kinds of methods, whatever works for you. And then finally, you have to decide how you're going to apply to each institution. So different schools are going to accept different applications. And so maybe all of the schools that you're considering are on the Common App or are QuestBridge partners, and you decide to apply that way. Or maybe schools offer the Common App and the Coalition, and I would recommend choosing one platform and sticking with it. But it'll be worth looking into what each school offers, whether they have a preference, and what is available to you there. And so with that, I think I'll pass it off to my colleague for the next slide.
Now, in terms of college affordability, the cost of higher education continues to increase. And the college and the space are strongly committed to making your college experience affordable and accessible to you. So the colleges in the space also practice what we call need line admissions. Need line admission need, which is the cost of attendance minus the family expected contribution. And uh-oh, looks like there's something choppy here. I might have unstable connection, so I apologize in terms of my projection here. I'm experiencing technical difficulties maybe, but okay, getting better. Okay, again, highlighting that the colleges, all 6 colleges here meet full demonstrated financial need. We're truly committed to ensuring that all of our students graduate with minimal debt in 4 years. And these are critically important because as we talk about student loan debt and the barriers and issues associated with student loan debt, we're minimizing the amount of loans that students take throughout their 4 years. And most of the 6 colleges may also not include student loans as part of your financial aid award letter. I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Hello again. It is me. I think to round us out here, as we think about, how do you even determine through this process whether or not you can afford one of these schools or what kind of financial aid you might receive at one of our institutions. So there are a few tools available to you in the college search process to try to answer this question. The first, and I think one of the most helpful tools that we can probably point you to is the net price calculator available on all our websites. And before anything else, I'll say that every college in the country is actually federally mandated to have a net price calculator available. And it's a tool that allows you to put in some of your family's financial information, and at the end of it, get a really solid estimate of what you might expect to receive in financial aid from that specific institution. The downside is that it can take some time to fill this out, 20, 25, 30 minutes on occasion. And it asks some fairly detailed questions. So you will need some more detailed information about your family's finances in order to fill this out. But again, at the end of it, you get a really good sense of what you might expect to receive in financial aid from that specific institution. And because pretty much every school out there is going to have this, it means that you can really kind of compare apples to apples in that way. Many schools, including R6, also offer something called My Intuition, or the Quick Cost Estimator, which is a much faster version of the net price calculator. It takes all of 2 minutes to complete, and at the end of it, you still get a really, really strong estimate of what you can expect to receive in financial aid from that specific institution. So there's almost no downside there. I would absolutely recommend checking it out if you haven't already. At the very least, I think it's a useful starting point for questions, and just trying to understand what kinds of institutions might be financially feasible for you and your family. And I think, in addition to all of that, it's of course hard enough to apply to college without also having to think about the process of applying for financial aid and making this really huge financial decision and commitment. And financial aid offices are really here to help guide you through the process and answer your questions. So don't be shy about reaching out. They're here to help. And we just want you to feel empowered with the information that you need to get through this process. So I do encourage you to see admission officers, of course, but also financial aid officers as resources as you wade through this process. And part of this process, of course, is understanding how you even apply for financial aid, which can look different depending on the school, depending on your citizenship. But pretty much every college will require the FAFSA for US citizens as the starting point for the financial aid application. And many other colleges, including certainly R6, require the CSS profile for all students as well, which is a much more detailed application for financial aid that really allows financial aid officers to dig into the details of your family's financial circumstances to get you the aid that you need. There are often also CSS profile fee waivers available for students applying for financial aid that might be available on the website or that you might have to reach out to ask for, but that's certainly an option as well. And then finally, I'll just reiterate that throughout this process, there will be differences in how the financial aid process works for US citizens versus international students versus undocumented students, and everything in between. So where possible, do some digging on the website. A lot of that information might be readily available to you there. But also, once again, don't be shy about reaching out to admission and financial aid offices directly if you're ever unsure or if you need clarification about your specific situation. We're always happy to answer those questions. And with that, I think I'll turn it back to Jackie as we turn to some Q&A.
Incredible. So I think that the main takeaway that I really encourage all of you to take from this evening is that all of our campuses really endeavor to feel like home for our students and for our students who go here. All of our classes are intentionally small. All of these experiences are really intended to be personalized so that you do get that experience of never being just a number, and instead making sure that you don't fall through the cracks during any of your time here. Whether that's your first week here or your last week here, our campuses are really designed to make sure that all of our students are having an experience of home while they're here. So I see some questions in the chat. I'm going to invite my panelists to come back on camera and go ahead and start asking some questions. I see some questions in the chat that might end up being campus specific, since students are asking about what various communities look like on our campuses. So I'm actually going to go ahead and invite, let's say, Windsor to talk about what affinity groups can look like on Swarthmore's campus. And the rest of us are going to go ahead and drop some links into some of these answers so that you can take a look at what affinity groups look like on our campuses, but what Windsor talks about, I'm sure, will be representative of what affinity group life can look like on campus, either for the LGBTQ community or some religious communities.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. And I'm glad you all are thinking about this. Like I said before, it's really important that you kind of figure out, again, what identities or what things are most salient for you in your life, and then go interrogate schools about what resources are there for folks who maybe share your experience in lots of different ways. So at Swarthmore, we have a number of different centers that are shared probably with all my 6 college partners here. We have a Black Cultural Center on our campus. It celebrated its 50th anniversary a few years ago, and it houses our African American and African and Caribbean student groups, as well as our gospel choir on campus as well. There's an intercultural center on our campus that houses a number of different student groups, 20 of them, includes our Latinx student group, our Indigenous Native student organization, our Korean and Japanese organizations, our international student office, our first generation low income student office. Our Interfaith Center is also housed inside the Intercultural Center. It includes our Jewish student organization on campus, our Christian Fellowship, our Muslim Student Association, in spaces for prayer and reflection in those spaces as well. We also have a women's resource center on our campus as well that houses some of our women's groups, including our Women of Color group and our Women in Computer Science group and so forth, right? And so what's important about these centers, again, that are on our campuses, it provides students an opportunity to find folks, again, who share their experience. In those student groups in those centers are gonna hold workshops, are gonna bring speakers to campus, hold lecture series, throw parties and performances, right? And they're really integral to the life of the college in lots of different ways, and will be integral to your time in college, no matter where you land. You're going to find folks who share your experience. You're a space where students can talk and engage with issues of diversity and inclusion, but also engage throughout the entire campus and on lots of different issues they may care about.
Thanks, Wins. There's a question here for the alums, which I think number among us a good number. So I'm going to invite Geraldine to go ahead and answer this question that came in. For alums, what factor mattered most to you in choosing a liberal arts college?
That is a great question. I always got the why Pomona, why liberal arts question. I worked as a tour guide here on campus, and I was always very straightforward about this. I chose Pomona initially for one reason, and that is something that has been highlighted here. That is a sort of financial promise that a lot of our institutions here can make. I came to Pomona because they gave me the most money, just cut and dry. That is initially what hooked me. And what we know is obviously a huge fit consideration for a lot of our students that are first generation, that are low income, right? You're thinking of academics, you're thinking of place of the college, you're thinking, do they have the groups that I'm interested in? Do they have my major? We know financial fit is also a strong consideration. And for me, Pomona was the one that was able to offer me the most financial aid. And so it made the most sense for my family, for my current situation, and my situation then, certainly. And then I think what I realized and what I started to value and what I now have told my younger siblings and other folks that I've talked to about the college application process is that you need to make the right decision for you at that time, right? Which is difficult when you're in high school and when you're a senior and you're like, okay, who even am I? What am I looking for? What I can say the value that I got from a liberal arts college now in retrospect was everything that we've covered today, right? The idea of relationship building with an incredibly diverse population in a small population and in a very academically sort of stimulating environment, right? It means that you are building relationship and connection and able to actually foster those connections in a really meaningful way. Again, there's social, professional, academic benefit to that will hold you during your 4 years, and that will certainly propel you even after you graduate. So it comes down to what is sort of the best fit for you, the things that you were considering, the pillars that make most, that you will need to prioritize, right? And those will be different across the board. For me, it was finances. I think in retrospect, it was finances and the relationships that I was able to sort of pull and really lean on during my time at Pomona.
Thanks, Geraldine. There's a question here about how to apply directly for fee waivers. All of us are going to have very slightly different options, but when you are filling out your application, so for instance, for Bowdoin, if you use the common application, the coalition application, as you're filling it out, one of our institutional questions will ask you if you're first generation to college or if you are applying for financial aid. If you check that box, then your application fee is automatically waived. That's an example of one of those things that you should really go deep diving on to make sure that basically in a spreadsheet, you figure out how to get application fee waivers from each of our schools, whether that's writing to us, whether that's automatically waived, or whether our schools have application fee waivers at all. So that was Bowdoin's process. I'm going to go ahead and mark this resolved and then have our other folks go ahead and talk in the chat as we answer a question in the answered box about how to get fee waivers. So that's just, I think, probably the best way to address school-specific questions. But application fee waivers are from our institutions are often very, very, very easy to obtain or basically automatic. So just make sure that you review those answers and you'll have a little bit more information about that. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead, or there we go. I'm going to go ahead and ask Carolina, what do students do for fun? A lot of our schools are located in smaller towns. And what is fun around these beautiful scenes that we find ourselves in front of?
Yes, no, absolutely. And there is so much to do. So all of our colleges are residential communities where students are living on campus, eating in dining halls, going to classes, working in the libraries. And so you're in this community where you are engaged in basically every aspect of your life there while you're a student. And that includes how you spend your time outside of the classroom. You know, there are very, very few students, I would imagine, among all of our schools who are not engaged in multiple activities outside of their classes. So whether it's a student organization, maybe they have leadership in one of the campus affinity groups, maybe they're really into theater and they're in multiple theater performances each year, or they're in a music group, or they join a cappella, which is such a, I was going to say cliche, but maybe quintessential college activity. I think there is a lot to do. And students come to campuses like ours because they want to be engaged in that kind of community and involved in those kinds of activities. Beyond that, our campuses also know that these are residential communities filled with students who are really eager to engage and to be busy and excited to do those things. And so our campuses will bring speakers and performances and concerts and other events to campus as well, so that students have opportunities to learn from people who are from outside the community, or opportunities to come together as a community in a different kind of a fun space. So there are many, many options and opportunities, I think, for students to have fun and be engaged and spend their time outside of class. And certainly in the admission process, we're always looking for students who are generally engaged, because we want those people to come to campus and to be excited to be engaging with each other there.
Great, thank you, Carolina. All right, let's see. There's a student here who has asked, coming from a high school with 4,000 plus students, how do you prevent students from feeling constrained? And I think that that's a nice way of asking, aren't your schools too small? How is it going to feel when I'm there? I'm going to invite Juan to go ahead and answer this on behalf of our smallness in our small liberal arts colleges.
Yeah, certainly a great advantage of being in such a small liberal arts space. You're truly able to leverage the resources that are available at our colleges, the partnerships that you create with faculty, staff, your classmates. Those relationships truly, are at the center of the liberal arts experience, because we know that when students are connected with faculty, there's a strong correlation in terms of research opportunities or conducting research with faculty, independent research projects. So students truly leverage the resources available at our colleges to take advantage of those. And in terms of kind of the overall size of our colleges, you'll find the opportunity to, if you're an introverted person, right, to have your space and have your time, do the things that you truly enjoy, but at the same time, you can venture out into the town, you can venture out into surrounding cultural community, thriving cultural communities, and explore, explore things that way as well. So you're not just limited by the space that you occupy in terms of our colleges. You also have the opportunity to venture out and explore surrounding towns, surrounding communities, and truly experience what's at the core of a liberal arts experience. So the spirit of close colloquy is truly at the center of that, the collaborative spirit.
Thanks, Juan. I'm gonna ask Demir, who has the privilege of having, of course, gone to Carleton, as several of us have also shared with our experiences. There's a question here that's asking, I know liberal arts colleges tend to be pretty academically challenging. So did we struggle with burnout or something similar? And how did we deal with that? What did the liberal arts experience give us that might have helped us out with that? And I think that we're seeing more and more students who are asking questions about mental health and burnout on campus. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, you gave me the hard question. I would say, in my experience, Carleton is a little bit different than my other colleagues' institutions here on the call, because we run on a trimester system, and so we only have 10 weeks to squeeze in so much information, and there's so many different assignments due, and you blink, after the first day of classes, and it's 6th week like it already is now, and in our fall term. And so the term can really run away from you. And there's so much that you have to do kind of in those moments. And so there are definitely moments, again, right, where you're going to be stressed out, especially about academics, right, because they are super rigorous, but just in our calendar system, right, and just generally, right, time flies by, right? And so definitely there were instances where, when I was a student, there were times where I was just super overwhelmed with everything that I had to do. But again, right, I really made sure that I found the support that was necessary for me. And so when it came to academics, I made sure that I made really great connections with my professors. And I was the student that didn't care when your office hours were. If I walked into that building and you were in your office, those were office hours to me, right? And so I really made sure that if I had a burning question, or if there was an exam about to happen and I needed to understand a certain concept, right, that I made sure that I went to that professor and let them know that, hey, I need help with this, because again, they are vested, right? They have a vested interest in our success, right? And they really want us. I mean, I don't think any professor wants to fail any student, right? They want the class to be fun, and they want everyone to be successful in it. And so for me, right, and I'm sure everyone else on the call, right, it's really important to find that support just across the board. And if that is, going to any of the mental health resources that we have on campus, or the academic support services that we have on campus, right, or all of them, right, a combination of all of them also, right, whatever you need to do, right, to make sure that you're not experiencing burnout. But again, right, there are going to be always rough patches, and there's so much to adapt to in college. And so, yeah.
Well done. There's a question here about any personal experience or insights about how schools interact with and support students who may have learning differences. I'm going to go, I think it's my turn in the lineup. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about this because, again, a lot of our campuses are really built to make sure that our students are being supported. And that is one of the benefits of going to a smaller college. I think that it'll feel like we're repeating ourselves. You're saying like small colleges are the experience, right? Small colleges are the places where you can find home, and small colleges are the ways that you find support. And that's just as true in this situation as it is in so many of the other answers that we've given. All of our schools are going to have offices for accommodations. They're all going to be named something very slightly different, I'm sure. But those offices are designed to make sure that you can go in and advocate for yourself. And that can be advocating for more time. That can be advocating for a note taker. That can be advocating for a tutor in a particular class. One of the benefits of going to our institutions is that our institutions are all here because we are incredibly well resourced, frankly, and able to support students who have any of those needs on campus. And that means that accommodating everything from learning differences to mental health challenges is part of our bread and butter for making sure that our students feel at home here. So our offices really prioritize making sure that you are doing your best learning, and whatever it takes to make that happen, accommodations wise, can be really helpful. Those office hours that we were just talking about, we really encourage students to use those, and that can be incredibly beneficial, especially for students who are who really need a little bit of extra support, right? Here, you're not going to be going to lectures of 300 students, right? 300 students for some of us represents more than half the size of our incoming first year classes. When your class size is 16 students, when your class size is 20 students or 12 students, your professor knows who you are, right? Your professor knows your name when you turn up and you say, hey, I'm going to need a little bit of extra time. Or when the accommodations person gets in touch with them and says, hey, there's someone in your class who needs a little bit of extra time, or they need the slides ahead of time. That's one of the benefits of going to a small college, where people know your name, people know who you are, and people are really able to come together and form a really comprehensive support network for you. So hopefully that helped answer that question, and took care of some questions just about what really the benefit is of going to a small school. All right. Let me see. I'm gonna go ahead and invite Windsor to just talk about some initiatives that SWAT has taken to foster a welcoming environment for not just a few students, but for all students. And then anybody else who wants to jump in and talk about just sort of college initiatives, just to hear about how our schools are thinking about that space year on year on year, would be really helpful. So I'm gonna invite Windsor to start, and anybody else can jump in if you'd like.
Yeah, this is a good question, because I think it's been really, really, you all as high school students probably spent some of this past couple of years doing virtual learning. And so part of what we've been thinking about on all our college campuses, but at Swarthmore's, we're coming back together as a community, all on campus for the first time, maybe in 2 years. And so had a number of initiatives for the last couple of years to help us do that work of getting to meet each other again. And one of the things new tradition that we started at Swarthmore is something called Garnet Days. Garnet is the official color of Swarthmore College, and Garnet Days happens once a month on the first last Thursday of each month, and invites the entire campus community, faculty, staff, and students to come together. This most recent Garnet Day included outdoor eating and food, and ice cream, and games that students and faculty and staff could join and play on in front of Paris Beach. There's no beach on our campus, but we call this lawn in front of our quad, Paris Beach. It's in front of Parish Hall. And that brought together faculty, staff, and students all together to enjoy each other's company. And that tradition began this past spring and has continued on through the summer and then into this fall as well. And so we're just reconnecting folks back together again. The other just thing I'll raise up too is that Swarthmore is a cash-free campus. That means faculty, staff, students don't pay for events, speakers, lectures that they go to on our campus. The activities fee that's part of tuition covers everything students may or may not do any given day. And that means students are able to participate in the social life or the academic life of the college without having to worry about how much money they have in our pockets. And that also brings together different students from all different interests. You can go see your friend's movie showing, you can go see your friend's gallery opening, you can go see your friend's performance on the stage, not to pay for those things. And that brings together the community as well. So I'm sure there's lots. I'll let my colleagues share other examples that they have.
Yeah, I think, Wins, that sounds really familiar. We've also, a lot of our campus initiatives this fall especially have been around, oh, right, there are 4 classes of students who go here. We've had some like permutation of some students on and some students off for so long that, but here at Bowdoin, we just had our fall festival / what we call Polar Pride, because we're the polar bears. And we just had a campus-wide initiative for an entire day of fun games, food trucks, and petting zoos, which was honestly just a really nice way to remind ourselves that there's a full campus community here. And that went alongside, of course, so many initiatives outside of our inclusion and diversity office, our inclusion and diversity offices, in really launching a You Belong at Bowdoin campaign. And there's lots of different initiatives that we're working on, including sources of funding for student training, staff training, and faculty training. But I do think that probably one of our biggest things has been an initiative just to make sure that we feel like a campus community. All right. I'm going to go ahead and ask Carolina a question about financial aid. And, we talked a little bit about financial aid during our presentation, but there is some jargon, there is some terminology, and there is a reality of what and how financial aid works. So some institutions provide financial aid via student loans, and that may not be feasible for some families, but also there are so many other sources of financial aid. So I was hoping that you could speak a little bit more about how financial aid works, how scholarships work, about how loans and grants and so on and so forth.
Yes, absolutely. So before anything, I'll just say that all of our schools will promise to meet 100% of your demonstrated financial need. It's how each school meets that need that is going to look a little bit different school to school. So the usual breakdown, depending on the school, is that as part of your financial aid, you might receive grant money, you might receive a loan, which is not going to feel like financial aid because it's money that eventually you have to pay back, but that is what colleges will sometimes package as part of your financial aid. And then there's also work study, where you work a campus job and the money that you earn is used to pay off things like personal expenses or other things that are built into your financial aid. So each of our schools has slightly different formulas and different ways of approaching that. But I think, I guess, to get to the core of your question, where our schools are different from many other places is that we do guarantee to meet 100% of your demonstrated need, and typically will cap the number of loans that are packaged as part of your financial aid. So you're not typically going to find, as part of a financial aid package, anything that's saying, okay, you have to take out 100% loans or something like that. The other thing where our schools might be a little bit different is when it comes to those hidden costs of attending college, which we talked a little bit about during the session. So there are many, many other funds throughout our schools within and outside of financial aid to address things like technology that you might need when you're a student. If you need winter clothes in a cold climate, if you have an emergency, maybe you sat on your glasses like I did a few weeks ago and you need to get a new pair or something like that, or you have a dental emergency or something like that, a school might pay your health insurance. So there are many other kinds of funds or ways that schools might approach those hidden costs of attending college that can really add up, but that also tend to be really readily available at our 6 institutions. So that is when you really start to get into those details of how financial aid and funding works at these different schools, where you have to do a little bit more digging, a little bit more research. But that's one of the ways where our schools might differ from other kinds of places.
Great. Thank you, Carolina. And then Geraldine, also as a recent alum of your college, are new students connected to student mentors on campus? And I think I'm going to broaden this question and say, how are first year students supported when they arrive on campus, whether that's through student networks, staff networks, so on and so forth?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something that all of the students on the call are wondering, right? Like, how is the actual transition into your first year? Again, for all of our schools, you'll find that there are a multitude of student groups or student mentor programs, whether they be based on identity or interest or academic major or club. We are also all institutions that provide intentional advisor partnering, right? So that means that because we have such few students coming in every single year, we can be really intentional about which staff member or which professor we connect you with before you even get to campus, right? It means that you will have, once you arrive, you will already be in communication. You will already know at least one other adult, right? Whether they're in your intended major or in a shared interest or in a like a club advisor for something that you have indicated in your application. There's intentional partnering there that happens from our office and from the student affairs office, right? So you get to campus, one, you already have a sort of adult, some sort of advisor or mentor. And then for most of our schools also, you will have either opt-in or sort of automatic entry into all of those different mentor groups that we mentioned, right? Based on identity, based on something that you might have shared on your application. And all of those will come to you when you're first year, right? So you will have your group for a club, you'll have your group for your identity, you'll have a group for your major, et cetera, different cohorts, different sort of social networks and groups on campus. And what we know is that because those processes are very helpful to students during their first year, most of them are wanting to just give that back, right? So as upperclassmen, they will then be the mentors and the advisors for the new freshmen that come in. Typically, it'll be groups of anywhere from, 5, 10, 15 students. And all of these groups will have also like funding from an institution or from the college or from the club to have community building events, right? Whether that's a movie night, whether it's an outing for dinner, whether it's roller skating, whether it's getting your nails done, right? Like that can be whatever it wants to be for your group, and that's up to you all to decide. But those mentor groups and those pairings happen largely before you even get to campus and fully once you are here. That's a really great way also to build relation connection with upperclassmen, right? To start those connections and say, hey, I'm interested in this major, or hey, I saw you had that internship last summer, tell me about it. I had so much opportunity and a lot of professional growth and benefits that came just from like chatting with some of my mentors and upperclassmen that I'd been connected to as a freshman.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing. And then there was a question here that I thought would be nice to end on. If we all want to go around and do a quick application tip. There's a question here of just like, what should I focus on in my application to get a holistic approach from the admissions counselors? And I think that all of us have a lot of thoughts on quick tips for your applications, just for you to come across. So I'm going to invite us, this is going to be a challenge for the panelists, for us to go in backwards alpha order, because Williams always has to go last. So I'm going to actually turn it backwards and invite Caroline to go first, for all of us to share our like tweet-sized quick tips for making sure that your application conveys what you want it to.
Yes, thank you for acknowledging the farce that is the alphabet. I will just say, try to get out of your head as much as possible what you think colleges want to learn or hear about you. And try to focus on the parts of yourself that you want to make sure that we get. We know that the application is two-dimensional, that we're never going to get everything that there is to know about you. And it's all about making choices about what you share. So think more about what you want to share and less about what you think we want to hear.
That's great advice, and I'll tie this pick it to your writing that you're using in the application. It's right from your authentic voice, right? You know, if you're a funny student and you're humorous in your writing, you can write a humorous essay, right? If you're less of a humorous writer like I am, right, you're not very funny in your writing, maybe don't try out your humor writing for your college application, right? Write from your authentic voice, the voice that you use every day in the writing that you're doing on a regular basis, because that's what we're actually looking for. What's your authentic voice? What are the things that you care about, your values, what you're hoping for? And we get that through the authentic language that you use every day. So don't go to the thesaurus and try to find words that make you sound smart. You're already smart. You're already amazing. You're already wonderful, right? You don't have to impress us. We're already impressed. Just give us your authentic voice, sense of yourself. That's what we're looking for in that essay and the other writing that we're going to ask you to do.
Awesome. I'm going to keep on this theme of not falling into what you think we might want or what we might expect, right? I think often we get students that have really great ideas about the problem that they want to fix, or the thing that they want to do, or the sort of, I've figured it out, this is what I'm here to do now, and what I just need college to like get me there, right? And I think what can be very honest and very authentic and very genuine and valid is not knowing that, right? So from my point of view, when I get questions in the essays, right, when I get like, I haven't figured it out yet, I actually don't know yet, right? And when some writing is actually phrased in the form of question, right, and that makes me step back and be like, okay, wait, let me actually think about that too. Like, let me reflect. And then you bring me into your head, into your thoughts, into your line of questioning, into your curiosities. And I think that can be a really helpful way to pull a reader in for any type of writing, obviously, but especially in these essays where we're trying to get a sense of the way that you think and the way that you're questioning and the way that you see yourself in this world. So it's okay to not have it figured out. You can voice that, and that is pretty refreshing sometimes.
Yeah, I would say context is key in any application. And so there are plenty of spaces on the application where we ask for additional information, right? And that is a space where you get to tell us, you know, my grade in this class looks this way because, hey, we've been in the pandemic for the past 3 years, or, you know, I struggled with an adjustment here. I moved from a high school and, you know, to a different high school with a different curriculum, or this teacher and I just didn't get along, right? Like whatever it is, right? There's space for you to advocate for yourself in any way that you see fit. And I think that, you know, admissions counselors, we do a lot of guessing when we read applications and when we're looking at transcripts and going through letters of recommendations and things like that. But utilize those spaces where you can give more context, give more information, and be able to advocate for yourself.
I can see the time, so I'm going to talk quickly. Your extracurricular list is not just a resume. It's not just a laundry list. It's a way of telling us how you have spent your time and what that says about what you value. So keep that in mind as you fill that out. Keep that in mind as you make sure that you tell us about what your life is. And a lot of you think that your life is just what it is. We don't want to hear about it, but we do want to hear about those pieces that include things like a part-time job, family care, commuting to and from school. Those things matter to us just as much. So don't make assumptions about what we know. Don't make assumptions about what we think your life is. As my colleague was just saying, your extracurricular list is a really, really valuable place for you to tell us what has been important to you. And to finish it out, Amherst.
I'll also follow the trend in terms of the college essay. The college essay or personal statement is truly an opportunity for you to tell us who you are. So we want to know who you are as a person, right? Also, will will this person contribute something of value to our campus community, to our student body? And last but not least, can you write? Can you tell us? Can you articulate very clearly and concisely about what you're trying to convey as part of your college essay? So those are the 3 tips. Who you are as a person, that's what we want to know as admission officers. Will this person contribute something of value in terms of enriching the student body? And can you write?
Incredible. Well, thank you, all of you who are listening on the call, for taking some of your morning, afternoon, or evening during what I'm sure is a really stressful period for your falls. So thanks so much again for coming out. All of us are accessible via our institutional websites. So feel free to go ahead and write to us if you have any further questions. But in the meantime, best of luck with the remainder of your semesters. Thank you so much again for taking some time to chat with us, and write to us if you have any questions. Take care. Bye.